who to come. And I declared this adjourned meeting from last Wednesday open. In doing so, I welcome all those present in the gallery, all councillors, staff, anyone watching. I believe we're on YouTube tonight, not live streaming. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet tonight, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay respects to their continuing connection to the land, waters and community, and to their elders past, present and their descendants. I have leave of absence approved by Council for Councillor Parry and Councillor Knight, both from the Whiteman ward. I believe all other councillors are present in the building, but not perhaps in the chambers at the moment. So we'll commence where we finished last meeting. There was a successful rescission motion. So we'll now move to that part. And Councillor Bowman, you have a recommendation or a motion for council.
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that council resolves to approve the application for the proposed use of the existing single house at Lot 8, number 2118, Great Northern Highways, Bullsbrook, for women's rehabilitation premises, the addition of a patio to the existing house and the installation of 2 transportable buildings for the purpose of the same, subject to the following conditions. 1. This approval is for a period of 18 months only and is personal to the West Australian Shalom Group Incorporated and does not run with the land. At the expiration of the approval period, the applicant owner must make a further application for planning approval. 2. The use of the land by the West Australian Shalom Group Incorporated for community purposes is listed as follows. Maximum program participant occupancy of the premises is limited to 18 women only and 1 caretaker. Transportable building 1 is used as storage room only. Transportable building 4 is for the use of the caretaker only. Attendance at the property by the program participants is by arrangement of the West Australian Shalom Group Incorporated. Program participants shall be provided with professional counselling, access to medical practitioners, and a supervised work program by the West Australian Shalom Group Incorporated. 3. The approved development must comply in all respects with the attached approved plans, as dated, marked, and stamped, together with any requirements and annotations detailed thereon by the City of Swan. The plans approved as part of this application form part of the development approval issued. 4. Access to the approved development is limited to the existing site crossover to Great Northern Highway, which shall be upgraded to the satisfaction of the City of Swan on advice from Main Roads, WA. 5. All building works to be carried out under this development approval are required to be contained within the boundaries of the subject lot. 6. All stormwater must be contained and disposed of on site at all times to the satisfaction of the City of Swan. 7. The approved development shall be connected to an on-site effluent disposal system approved by the Department of Health or otherwise connected to reticulated sewer. Where approval to the on-site effluent disposal system has been obtained from the Department of Health, the system is to be installed, connected and operational within 90 days of the date of issue of the approval. Mr Mayor, the rest is as per the officer's recommendation. Do you want me to continue reading? Or?
No, everyone has got that in their run sheet. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I'll now call for a seconder. Councillor McCulloch, thank you. Is there anyone against? Councillor Johnson, you're against? Thank you. If you start your debate, thank you, Councillor Bowman. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, you like me have received the same information, heard the same deputations, and for those who have undertaken the site visit, have seen the same as me. So I'm not going to go over any of this information again. Councillors, I am making a few amendments to the officer's recommendation, which I'll go through now. Firstly, I've unified the timeframes of when everything is required to be done by 90 days. This is to make it simple and easy for both the applicant and the city. Secondly, I've included the condition that transportable building 1 is for use as storage room only and transportable building 4 is for the use of a caretaker only. We have heard and received different information about the intended use of these 2 buildings, which does concern me. And we can do without any more confusion on this item. This condition is to clarify for the applicant, the city and the neighbours the use of Building 4 for the caretaker and the caretaker only, which is what I was previously advised it would be used for, and makes sense as the application, both the previous one and the revised one, states that the caretaker was to live on site. By ensuring that everyone is on the same page with transport of Building 4, this results in the maximum occupancy now being 18 women in the existing house only, and the caretaker in the transportable. I acknowledge there will be other internal modifications that will be needed to be done to the house as being a community purpose. It will no doubt need to meet the requirements of a community building, so such things I would expect are a commercial kitchen, emergency exit lighting, minimum bathroom facilities, etc., which is for the safety of occupants. But this would have had to be done for both Park Street and Forest Street property, so they would not be unknown. But as this is not part of the planning process, I understand they are not required to be conditioned for this application. And finally, Mr. Mayor and councillors, the other change is that the approval is for a period of 18 months only. It is not uncommon for various applications within local government to be given a time period only approval in the first instance, particularly when there has been a number of concerns raised about amenity, which has been in this application. Does this give certainty to Shalom House? No, it doesn't. Is it what the neighbours want? No, it's not. However, it continues to provide a roof over the head of the up to 18 women currently already living in the house. It gives time for the applicant to complete his plans for the additional houses, accommodation and meeting room that had previously indicated for this site and was included also in the original planning application. It gives time for the Shalom board to further investigate other options, and it gives time for the neighbours to see what the impacts are. Councillors, do I still have concerns? I sure do, as we will be allowing 18 women to continue to use a house designed for a lot less. But in particular, we have received professional advice from both the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions and the Department of Health that clearly states standard septics are not suitable for this property. We are being told by staff that we can address this issue by putting a condition on the approval. However, this condition is not requiring that the new system is be in place within 90 days. It is 90 days from approval from the Department of Health. How long will this approval take is anyone's guess. But considering they've indicated groundwater tests in winter, which is July, August next year, then time to approve, and really, who knows how long the Department of Health will take, but let's assume 3 months, which I think has been very generous for the Department of Health, and then another 90 days for it to be installed. That includes purchasing the system, getting it to site, and then connect. The best case is early 2024. The overuse of the current septics would have been going on for more than 18 months by then. As to what environment damage is done, I don't know.
You have 1 minute left.
But what I do know is the Department of Health and the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions have raised serious concerns, and therefore we should have concerns.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCulloch is the second. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, Councillor Bowman has spoken to specific aspects pertaining to the planning considerations around this development. He's informed us, and I think that is sufficient. I'm going to look at this in regards to these planning considerations from that very important amenity aspect. So, Mr. Mayor and councillors, I want to begin by stating that the staff and volunteers at Shalom House do an exceptional job. Over the years, I have supported the work of Shalom wholeheartedly, from providing donations and encouraging others to do so, moving motions at council that support the organisation, providing connections, contacts and networks. I have friends who've spent time at Shalom and come through the program with encouraging amounts of success. The chairperson of the Board of Shalom, in his deputation at the Agenda Forum a couple of weeks ago, stated that we hold our residents to a high standard of behaviour. I question why the highest standards of behaviour are not being modelled across the whole organisation and every individual, particularly key leaders who are examples and role models for Shalom residents. Behaviour that results in media releases that incite anger and aggression in our community, and that directly impact a level of reasonable amenity for surrounding neighbours and residents, not to mention also against council and state government. The issue here that is, on one hand, council being informed that residents are being held to a high standard of behaviour, but then Shalom Group in some media posts showing a disregard for planning laws, stating that laws will be broken if considered necessary for residents of Shalom House. But what about the rights of neighbouring properties and the residents that reside there? Residents' amenity that time and time again is negatively impacted from consistent social media tirades that instigate some hatred and antisocial behaviour from some supporters of Shalom. There's a contradiction and a disconnect between the behaviours expected of residents and those exhibited by certain others. Time and time again, the city has had same issues with Shalom Group failing to get approvals for properties that are being utilised for operations. And it's another one here of those cases. A town planner, I still believe, is a member of the Shalom board, and one would think that after over 8 years of operation, this expertise would assist Shalom Group with future-focused strategy through planning processes for Shalom's expansion. But it appears that this is not the case. We're not dealing with someone who does not understand the planning process. In fact, it is very much the opposite. Questions and issues and concerns pertaining to amenity for surrounding neighbours and residents, Mr Mayor, are important to consider, and the quiet enjoyment of one's property is a valid and proper planning consideration. Bullying, the intimidation and slander of those who are not supportive of Shalom's unregulated setups at times have had significant consequences for everyday people. We've already heard at times from neighbours of the Shalom properties in Bullsbrook and how their enjoyment of properties has been affected. Amenity is a consideration we have to take into account when we make decisions in this chamber. And there is not any doubt that the amenity of neighbours has and will be affected if we approve this development in its entirety. It's not good enough for us to say, oh, well, yes, they're doing great work, and I do believe they are. So we can ignore our obligations to planning laws and our responsibility to existing neighbours. We must look at the whole picture, not select parts of it. Mr Mayor, I've experienced myself firsthand treatment, intimidation and bullying, and social media posts that are misleading and aggressive. Over time, these have taken their toll.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Over the years, there have been many social media posts supporting the work of Shalom House that have contained misleading and untruthful information. This unfortunately has led to attacks on myself and residents and neighbours of Shalom residences. These posts have consistently instigated loathing and animosity. Innocent people, residents and neighbours have been traumatised by this behaviour. Residents and neighbours' amenity, of which again I remind us all is a relevant and proper planning consideration. Mr Mayor, I have been poorly treated by some leaders in the Shalom Group for doing my job in this chamber. Sadly, I have been physically assaulted, had my personal property damaged, and have on numerous occasions been verbally abused by supporters of Shalom House. It's entirely possible, Mr Mayor, that I, along with any other councillors who don't support this application in its entirety, will be subject to more of the same. Councillors, we need to seriously consider this development with those very valid and relevant planning considerations.
Thank you, Councillor
May
McCulloch.
I have a little more time, Mr
How long
Mayor?
have you got? Can I ask?
Maybe about 40 seconds.
Is there anyone against? Then please continue.
Those very real and relevant planning considerations, which I have stated, are continually threatened. Amenity that is consistently threatened by behaviours that I have previously mentioned. At the very least, I implore the board members of Shalom to play an integral part in assessing the content of media releases and social media posts that are sent out on behalf of Shalom. I ask that for the health, well-being and the protection of amenity of surrounding residents and neighbours, that the board realise their responsibilities in helping to moderate information released to the public, to fact check and to address untruths and misinformation that are inciting aggression and poor behaviour. We must properly consider this application, Mr Mayor, and after taking all relevant factors into account, make a determination that Council considers to be a correct application of planning laws. And I encourage you to support Councillor Bowman's motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCulloch. Speaker against, Councillor Johnson.
Amendment.
What is your amendment, please?
It's in the order paper, Mr. Mayor, on page 9. So my proposed amendment, which will make the motion supportable by me, is that I'd like to amend condition 1. So that's 1.1 in Councillor Bowman's motion. So I think we've got that there. So what I intend to do is to replace condition 1 with the following, and it's up there on the board. This approval limits the installation of the 2 transportable buildings on the lot for a period of 36 months only, and is personal to the West Australian Shalom Group Inc. and does not run with the land. At the expiration of the approval period, the applicant owner must make a further application for planning approval to retain the 2 transportable buildings on the lot.
Thank you. I'll ask if that's suitable to the mover and the seconder.
It isn't, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to ask your ruling on whether that is in a breach of 6.10 subsection 2 of our meeting procedure local law. Thank you.
In that you're saying it's contrary to your motion. Thank you. I believe there's enough in it to show the differences. I'm not going to rule that it is contrary. So I'll ask for a seconder to the amendment. Councillor Richardson. Is there anyone against the amendment? There is. Councillor Johnson, you have 5 minutes to open your debate on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, Mr. Mayor, my amendment is designed to put into effect the letter of Flint Legal that we received since the last meeting, and it was written on behalf of West Shalom Group Inc. that requests some changes to Councillor Bowman's alternate motion. First, and the reasons, councillors, are as follows. So first of all, neither the applicant nor the objectors asked for an 18-month limit. So it's not something that is out there. Nevertheless, in response to Councillor Bowman's alternate motion, what Flint Legal has asked for is that the approval for a community purpose be time limited to 3 years in the case of the demountables, but not time limited in the case of the house. This is for the obvious reason that a demountable is intended to be a temporary structure, and this house is already a permanent structure. Shalom have said they are happy to remove the demountables after 3 years because they have another intention for the site. My amendment supports the limitation that the approval is personal to West Shalom Group and does not run with the land. If and when Shalom leave, then the community purpose ends. Councillors, is this community purpose going to cause a problem to the neighbours? Well, there is a distance of over 90 metres from the nearest building in the adjacent northern property to the house at number 2118. How can anyone object to visual impact, noise impact, privacy impact of an existing house at a distance of 90 metres? And we've heard that it may cause an amenity issue, but I really don't believe that this house in this location with just 18 women and children in it is going to cause any amenity impact whatsoever, especially when I understand a new access road is going to be built. The transportables, I understand, are not in sight of the nearest neighbouring house and will be a very modest addition to the 40-hectare site, which already has some large sheds. Mr. Mayor and councillors, the community purpose is for 18 women and children who will not be using the road adjacent to the house. I do not see how these 18 women and children in an existing house could cause any disturbance to the neighbours or have any impact at all on their amenity. I doubt the neighbours will even see them. So, councillors, this motion just adjusts Councillor Bowman's motion to make it more realistic. It reflects that there is an existing house. We understand that a community purpose has been, Shalom is a community purpose as determined by the Supreme Court. There's no reason why the house should not be used as a community purpose, or the Shalom houses that have been through the process, I believe, have been approved. And 18 months, the 18-month duration given in Councillor Bowman's motion is not enough time, I don't believe, given the current situation in the building industry to put up permanent buildings. I think 3 years is more realistic, and I believe that is why Flint Legal have asked for 3 years. So, councillors, I'm supporting Councillor Bowman's motion if my amendment is successful, which is basically to give a permanent community purpose approval to the house, subject to ownership by Shalom, and 3 years to the demountables. Please support this motion, councillors, because I believe it is what our community wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson is the second of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and those in the gallery. Councillors, tonight I just ask you to consider Councillor Johnson's motion. Tonight we have a motion up for the Women's Rehabilitation Centre. It has been a heated debate within the community and at council, and we look to see that we get a fair and equitable outcome for the neighbours and for Shalom and its residents. Councillors, please consider that the time limit that is applied in Councillor Bowman's motion means that the proponent will be made to make changes to that property, and it will be made to make to the approval and the development a cost to Shalom and Shalom Group. And stated by Councillor Johnson, this is not what was requested initially from the applicant. By putting in the effluent system, by changing the driveways, by amending everything in the development application to make it possible for them to even stay there for that short amount of time, is a very, very costly expense to a community group property. The property has already been purchased, and remembering this is a non-for-profit organisation. This being that the property has been purchased, the works will be undertaken, and however that time frame allowed means that in 18 months, if approval is not granted, then that property may well need to be sold, or the proponent can take it to SAT. That's a decision that becomes the proponent's. We've made exceptions to the number of women being housed to be reduced, as is. We now have women that will not be or have accommodation for them. We've also made changes to the amount of demountables. The proponent has been willing to make these changes and has been in conversation with council. But has also been asked to reduce the amount of time for these people to live there in uncertainty. So councillors, tonight I'm just asking that you consider that the 3 years for this house and these demountables are also a satisfactory and a reasonable request to consider. So please support Councillor Johnson's motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment? Councillor Bowman, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I thought we dealt with permanent approval. It was revoked. But here we are again, via amendment, looking for permanent approval. Mr Mayor, Councillor Johnson talked to us about what Flint Legal wanted. They want permanent. Didn't mention what the neighbours want. They don't want any approval at all. You mentioned transportable is a transportable. Well, a house is a house too. Mr Mayor, this doesn't adjust my motion. It completely changes it, but I understand you've ruled. Mr Mayor, it's very clear, and to make it even clearer, to ensure there was no confusion, I added the following to my motion. At the expiration of the approval period, the applicant owner must make a further application for planning approval. The letter dated the 10th of October 2022 from Flint Legal suggests that maybe I'm confused. I can assure every councillor here that I'm not confused, and I'm fully aware that this condition only provides for 18 months approval for both the use of the house and the 2 transportables. Councillors, I understand, and you no doubt would have all read Mr Flint's letter, that Shalom wants an approval that is not time limited. And he quotes what he thinks I may be referring to in the letter. What he doesn't quote, and what he definitely isn't aware of, is the reason why I've put the 18 months time limit on the entire application. And that is, the application from Shalom states, the intention of WASG is to approval for and undertake the development of a permanent women's rehabilitation premises on the property. And Mr Mayor, that goes along with what we've been told by the neighbours and the residents through a number of screenshots and Facebook posts by the Shalom CEO of what he intends to do in the future of this property, all which I would suggest are not permitted in a landscaping zone, as they are ex-use. Mr Mayor, the application for Shalom itself states they are wanting to undertake further development. That's in the application itself. Wanting to not have a time limit would suggest to me that the current house will always be a part of the future plans development of a proposed future development of a permanent women's rehabilitation centre. Otherwise, it could appear that the thinking of those behind the application is if they get approval for community purpose, that will either give them the green light for further development or at least make it easier to argue a future case. Councillors, I have read the correspondence from Minister Saffioti that the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage are investigating facilities in which rehabilitation and care are provided in consideration of appropriate policy settings, land use definitions and permissibility. In the decision of Grace versus the City of Nedlands, it was found time limit consents are appropriate where there is likely to be some change in the planning framework or in the character of the locality. The correspondence from Minister Saffioti makes a time limit approval very relevant, as there is possibility there will be a change to the planning framework, and as such, it is appropriate for the 18-month approval to be for the house as well. Additionally, if I dissect the Grace versus City of Nedlands decision further, it also suggests that a time limit approval is appropriate where there are management issues. We have heard many examples from community members of issues. The 18 months will allow everyone to observe if there are in fact issues or not. We have the ability to put an 18 months time limit on the house as well, and we should do so. Therefore, I urge all councillors not to support this amendment. Grace versus City of Nedlands provides legal direction, and this is the further reason why I'm not in support of the amendment.
You have 1 minute left, thank
Councillors,
you.
to finish with, it comes back after 18 months. We can approve another 18 months or do something else at that point in time. Councillors, I urge you not to support this amendment, which is going back to the decision that we revoked, which we decided was against the permanent.
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment. Councillor Henderson, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start off by saying that clearly this is a very difficult application to deal with, and I've thought about this long and hard. The point is, we've been told that someone's going to buy the block. Well, that may well happen. If we approve it for 18 months or if we approve it for 36 months, and Shalom leave, well, it automatically lapses anyhow. So I don't see that there is any issue there, because if it is sold, the issue goes away. So I have another problem too. What might happen in the future, what the minister might do, is completely problematic. We have no idea where that's going to go. And whilst I understand that there's a potential for a change in the zoning and the law, the possibility is just that, a possibility. We have a responsibility to deal with this matter before us. It's come before us to deal with, and we have to deal with it on the facts before us. And the facts before us currently are quite clear, that they have said in a letter to us that they wanted the 36 months as a minimum. And I think we are obliged to deal with that. Otherwise, clearly they may be aggrieved and want to do something else with it. In respect of the sewage and the septic issue, the fact of the matter is that whether or not you can have a septic system on that block of land is debatable. The fact is that you can deal with sewage in multiple different ways with bioreactors. You can deal with it in so many different ways these days that I don't believe that the sewage issue is a problem for them to deal with. But what I do have a problem with is if we give them 18 months, why would they want to invest any money in doing those things, knowing that they may get chucked out literally within 18 months? So I don't think that's fair or reasonable on the applicant, and I do believe that what Councillor Johnson has proposed is reasonable and fair, and after the end of that period, we can see where it lands. But at this point in time, I do believe that we have an obligation to proceed with the applicant's development plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment? Any other speakers for or against the amendment? Being no further speakers, before I hand back to you, Councillor Johnson, I'll ask the Deputy to take the chair and I'll enter the debate. I'm not supporting the amendment. heard comments before. Councillors should explain why they vote a certain way. So this is my opportunity to do that. I don't support the amendment. My preference is for Councillor Bowman's amendment because I think it would be prudent to exercise some caution. Councillor Henderson has just talked about what's fair and reasonable to the applicant, but also I'm considering what's fair and reasonable to the existing residents that live nearby. I believe 18 months is an opportunity for Shalom to show their high standard of community neighbourhood friendship, or it will give the council the opportunity to reconsider it in 18 months' time. And it may be then we could perhaps give permanent approval or another time-limited approval. So I support Councillor Bowman's alternative motion in preference to Councillor Johnson. That's why I'm not supporting it, and I'd ask you to do the same. Thank you, and you've got now 5 minutes, Councillor Johnson, for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors Shalom have said in their letter from Flint Legal that a 3-year limit for the demountables is acceptable. So that is what they actually have communicated to us. It's a fact that the neighbours don't agree with 3 years, but the neighbours want it knocked back altogether. We're considering this approval now, not a future approval. So we shouldn't be thinking about another development on the site or what might happen in 18 months' time. We need to look at what we're doing now. With regard to whether the house should have a permanent approval as a community purpose, well, why shouldn't it? There's no reason been given why it should not have such a purpose. It's at a significant distance away from the neighbouring property, over 90 metres. I don't believe 18 women or children are going to cause any disturbance at all to the amenity. Councillor Bowman spoke about what Minister Safiotti might or might not do by changing the law, but again, it's a might, and our planning staff advised us that it's not something we should consider. And when I asked Mr. Van Heem's lawyer, who's now Mr. McLeod, what if that should be considered, he said no. And I asked him if it was capable of approval. The same lawyer said yes. Councillor Bowman mentioned precedent. My understanding is there's no precedent in planning. You have to go as far as the supreme law in planning to get precedent, I believe. Bringing it back to council, well, council, as every council knows, this is a very busy council. Decisions are now running over 2 or 3 meetings. We don't need anything coming back to council if it doesn't need to. My understanding is the septic tank issue is a building approval matter rather than being a planning matter. And as Councillor Henderson said, an 18-month approval is not going to encourage Shalom to invest in fixing this septic issue. So, councillors, for those reasons, I encourage you to support my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to make it clear, councillors, we're now voting on Councillor Johnson's amendment. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Of Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Richardson, which is 5. The amendment is lost. We now go back to Councillor Bowman's amendment. Councillor Bowman and Councillor McCulloch have spoken to that amendment. I'll ask for a speaker against. Well, the motion, sorry. So I've had 2 speakers, being the mover and the seconder. Does anyone wish to speak against it, or I'll put it to the vote? You wish to speak against it, Councillor Johnson?
I want to speak for it, Mr. Mayor.
Or if there's no one against, I'm going to put it to the vote. Okay, those in favour, I have Councillor Jones, Bowman, Predovnik, sorry I couldn't see, Johnson, Howlett, Congdon, myself, Zanino, Henderson, Richardson and McCulloch, which is 11, with Councillor Catalano against. Thank you. That completes that item of business, which now takes us to Part C of the agenda. And Part C, number 1, motions of which previous notice have been given. C 1.1, Councillor Jones, repurposing the Centre of National Resilience in Bullsbrook. It's on page 768. Councillor Jones, your notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add to my motion the amendment by Councillor Bowman.
Well, perhaps
is
if you
on
could
the
read
second
it out
page.
and
Oh.
include that
Okay.
extra.
That the council resolve to request that the mayor write to the state government of WA requesting that there's a feasibility study conducted into repurposing the Centre for National Resilience in Bullsbrook into a facility that provides a benefit to the state of Western Australia, a benefit to the city of Swan, and a benefit to the residents in Bullsbrook.
Thank you. Seconded,
you.
Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone against? I declare that carried. Moving on to the next item, Councillor Jones, C 1.2, vehicle escape training. It's on page 769. Councillors, Councillor Jones, if you could please read your.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council resolved to write to the Minister for Road Safety requesting consideration of how drivers can be encouraged to carry window breaking tools in their vehicles for use in an emergency and provide education on how to escape from a vehicle in an emergency.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowman, is there anyone against? I'll declare that carried. And then we go to C 1.3, Councillor Henderson, Swan Valley postcode. It's on page 774 of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I move that council resolve to have the CEO write to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, it's the ABS, and Australian Post Office seeking a single postcode for all the locations of the Swan Valley legislated area. And I think there was an addition from Councillor Zanino. Is there? Thank you. As advocated by the Swan Valley Tourism Alliance Incorporated and Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association Incorporated, to support adjustments to the census boundary mesh blocks according to the Swan Valley boundary legislated area as detailed by the ABS in correspondence to the Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association Incorporated, whilst retaining the current locality names.
And have you got a reason which is encompassed in either A or B, Councillor Henderson?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't think that notice of motion from councillors need a reason other than the motion was the reason. But what we're looking to do is to get a unified process for postcode across the Swan Valley. That does not necessarily mean name changes of locations, but a single postcode which can be identified by search engines and the like.
Thank you. And the reason I asked is just the previous two notice of motions had a reason recorded, so I was just trying to be consistent. I have a seconder, Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Question, Councillor.
Thank you. My question through you to staff is that the current postcodes for other localities within this legislated area, has there been any opposition to the thought of having a postcode change from their existing postcode or the locality?
Sorry, Councillor, you're asking me or staff?
Through the Medway staff.
Thank you, Ms. Lay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Previously, there have been requests to staff to advocate on behalf of community to have a single postcode for the Swan Valley area.
Sorry, and has that gone to community and any feedback?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the city hasn't progressed that to consult with the community, but is certainly in support of Councillor Henderson's motion to do so. So we don't have any current feedback from the community.
I I've got a mover in Councillor Henderson and Zanino. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried. And that completes all items in the agenda, councillors. And I'll close the meeting at 6:40.
Notice of motion, Mr Mayor.
What's your notice of motion, councillor Henderson?
Mr
I
Mayor,
thought
I'm
we-
sorry for some reason it's not in the agenda, but been working on this with staff. The notice is to resolve to write off the current rates and future rates where there has been a change in predominant use of land.
I think that's for next month, councillor Henderson.
Yeah, notice of motion, yeah.
We've received it and it'll be in next month's agenda.
It's not in there. So, okay, so long as you've got it. Thank you.
And I've closed the meeting at 6:40 PM and thank everyone for their attendance. We're going to have a 15-minute break and then come back for a briefing session. Thank you, councillors.